And welcome back to the Hot Lap. We're talking Lewis Hamilton versus Charles Leclerc, round one pre-season edition. Yeah, they've gone, well, sort of head-to-head. And who has been the fastest? Well, it's quite interesting because you don't know much from testing. It's really hard to tell. But, hey, there are times we know the internet likes to make big things before the F1 season when it comes to testing. Let's have a talk about it. So Lewis Hamilton back in action as Ferrari and McLaren complete the Pirelli test. And if you look at this, these were the times. They've been updated since, but a 1:15.930 by Lewis Hamilton and a 1:16.060 by Charles Leclerc. Having said that, according to PlanetF1.com, these are not the latest times. We'll get into that in a second. But this was one of the shots at Barcelona where they were doing their testing. And their four drivers covered nearly 3,000 kilometres. It was a Pirelli test to test prototypes, not on the 25 tyres, but the 2026 tyres. That's quite significant because also you don't really know what tyres they're using. Kind of like if you remember when they do the tyre tests during the practice session. So Lewis Hamilton back on track for Pirelli, and the test that took place this week in Barcelona, well, the circuit of Barcelona, the place where we have the Spanish Grand Prix. But Charles Leclerc was fastest overall, pray tell. So as the new technical regulations for 2026 make F1 cars, they're smaller and lighter, not this year, but 2026. The tyres are also going to be narrower by 25 millimetres at the front and 30 millimetres at the rear. And they'll have what is a slightly smaller diameter, though the wheel size is not changing. So as a consequence, Pirelli has been testing prototypes ahead of next year, with a 2-day test completed with McLaren at Circuit Paul Ricard last week for wet and intermediate tyres. I did not know about that. And further 2-day running was just completed in Spain. Now, Ferrari drivers Hamilton and Charles Leclerc shared the SF24, while on Tuesday, Lando Norris was driving the MCL60. That's from the 2023 season, so not a race-winning McLaren like last year. But with both cars featuring technical adaptations, making them closer to the 26 regulation requirements. This was the first time 7-time world champion was back on track after his whoops-a-daisy at the same track last week, which was detrimental to, as we know, Ferrari and Leclerc's mileage. Now, this time the programme centred around development of the slicks. At least that's what a press release from Pirelli stated. Specifically, being tested were various compounds and constructions, the latter from the hardest end of the range. So you got from the C1 to the C3. So the higher the C, the softer the tyres, basically, as they were all well suited to the Spanish track, which is particularly demanding on tyres, kind of like Silverstone, if you remember. They also had the hardest tyres. The three drivers completed no fewer than 332 laps overall on Tuesday, with Norris racking up 159 of those laps. Leclerc and Hamilton each covered 86 and 87. So 86 for Charles Leclerc, 87 for Lewis Hamilton. Norris, though, was fastest, setting a 1:15.215 as his quickest lap time, followed by Hamilton on a 1:15.930 and Leclerc on a 1:16.060. So Hamilton just a smidge faster. Piastri took over at the wheel of the McLaren on Wednesday. He completed 152 laps. Leclerc and Hamilton managed 74 each. This amounted to 300 more laps, meaning Pirelli's engineers now have a lot of data, and I imagine they'll be very excited by that data. But Leclerc was fastest overall. His marker was a 1:14.971. Piastri and Hamilton were lapping in the 1:15.8 and 1:16.7. So a 1:16.759. So Hamilton a lot slower after initially being faster. The Pirelli press release, though, and this is like the big caveat, this is the big but, it did point out that those lap times have no real significance, given the different work programs. And it was a very useful session, particularly when it came to providing a comparison between the various different constructions for next season. But everyone's going to be talking about the times. So let's talk about those times. So, why are they different? Well, in terms of programs, sometimes it will be, we said the C1 to the C3 tyre. We don't know what tyre Hamilton and Leclerc were testing or did their fastest times on. Also, Pirelli are going to know, I'd imagine, different fuel loads and how the tyre wears. They also might want to know different downforce modes on the front and rear wing, or maybe even slightly different setups possibly. And once again, that can be a big difference. So the truth is, we have a look at all these testing times. We are not really going to know until Q1, Q2 and Q3 in Australia. We'll have an idea after testing, a little idea we'll have an idea after the practice sessions in Australia, but we're not really going to know until we have the end of Q3. And in terms of overall pace in the race, we're not really going to know until the end of the race in Australia. But Australia is an outlier. So in terms of Charles Leclerc versus Lewis Hamilton round one, yeah, I mean, Hamilton fastest on one day, Leclerc fastest on the next day by a significant amount. What does it mean? If I'm honest, absolutely nothing. So Pirelli 26 spec tyre testing will resume on the 13th and 14th, Valentine's Day, February in Jerez with Alpine, McLaren and Mercedes 1 day each. Alpine have 2 days. Bahrain will then host another session on the 2nd or 3rd of March, just after pre-season testing, with Alpine and Williams in attendance on both those days. So there we go. All things being equal, we don't know really much more, but it's nice to have a chat about it, isn't it? Nico Rosberg incidentally has come out and he's convinced, can't find the quote here, but he's convinced that Lewis Hamilton, given a decent Ferrari car, is a Leclerc beater. I think he's absolutely can beat Leclerc, just as Leclerc could potentially beat Lewis Hamilton. George Russell managed it as well. But I think this is a very different Lewis Hamilton going to Ferrari. It's I would argue, a more motivated Lewis Hamilton, potentially with the car, maybe a more happier Lewis Hamilton, but we will have to wait and see. So if you made it to the end, that's absolutely amazing. Thank you very much. I'm just happy with the fact that you clicked on this video. But if you want to do that a little bit more, hit that subscribe button. If you are not subscribed, hit that notification button if you don't want to miss a video. But if you want to help even more, hit that like button. Hit that like button. That makes me smile. Comment below, let us know, and we'll speak to you soon. Thank you very much for watching, and of course, stay safe.